take a few minutes, little second from here.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed it works, that I don't get the circle of death that you can get sometimes.
Okay. Looking good.
Okay. I think I can see it on Facebook. I'm going to get out of that Facebook, but we are, in fact, live.
Woohoo.
We are. Alyson, it is such an honour to have you as my guest here on the Joyful Business Club.
It's actually my pleasure to be here. Thank you, Serena.
I met Alyson earlier this year at Business at Breakfast in a networking group, and I really felt that she had a calmness about her and a wisdom that was evident even then before I even spoke to her. I know that sounds odd, but some people just have that sense of being really wise souls, and Alyson is one of them.
Wow, thank you. That's a big wrap. Thank you. I can't believe it's only this year. It seems like I've known you forever.
Yeah, I know, it was January, and I remember because I think I met you the week before I headed off to Spain to visit my husband, who was on a work trip. He'd been there over Christmas, and we'd been apart from Christmas, and so I wanted to go and see him. And, you know, who would have thought that here we are in November, and thinking back to that time, which was still, you know, smoke haze, and it was difficult. I remember it rained and hailed when I was at the airport. The plane was delayed,
Wow.
and how amazing that felt. You know, these days, just to say, well, I'm heading off to Spain, like, you just can't do that, can you?
Unless you're zooming to Spain, that's about it, right? So I have, with Misty, I've been to a meeting in Portugal, a networking meeting in Portugal. How awesome was that?
Wow,
Yeah.
that is pretty cool. Now, just to explain a little bit more about Alyson's background. So she was a teacher for many years, teaching adults and then high school students. Then she moved to Canberra for work, which is the path of many people who come to Canberra, became a public service and worked with the Department of Defence for 25 years. Now, you didn't know this, Alyson, but I actually started my career at Department of Defence as well.
Wow, were you glad?
Yeah, and so Alyson then started her coaching business a couple of years ago. So she is really talking today about how to live an empowered life on so many levels. So over to you, Alyson.
Thanks, Serena. So yes, I was a teacher first. I was first teaching adults, and I ended up, although I was primary trained, I ended up working with the IAAF at Laverton in Melbourne because there were no teaching jobs. And a friend of mine said that if he didn't get a job teaching, also, you know, Teachers College with me, he'd go and join the army as a second lieutenant. And I didn't know what the hell that meant. But I thought, I was just tired of sitting at home and not doing anything and applying for jobs and being told I was too qualified. So I trotted off to the recruitment centre. Luckily, Army were not recruiting because I don't think I'm a good fit for Army or, in fact, any of the services. But they had a program there for adult military students from Southeast Asia. So I started working there, and that's where then I met my husband. And then I went off, after my time there finished, I went off to teach high school. And then I got married, and then we came up to Canberra for Steve's work, and I had done the public service exam, which used to exist in those days and hasn't for the longest time.
Yeah.
And I got into the public service as well. And again, by coincidence, defence. So I've had a long association with defence.
I remember
last year.
The public service exam. I must have been one of the last people. I did okay in it, but because I'm very, very right brain, I'm never as good with maths and logic. And I was like, you know, like I'm looking for a policy position where I'm writing. Like, why does whether I can do odd maths problems have anything to do with anything? It was weird.
I guess they just need to have some means by which they can, you know, have a standard testing system. But I hear you.
Yeah, it was just a bit odd. Now, empowered. Empowered is one of these words that sometimes gets a little overused.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can even be triggering for some people. When you talk about living an empowered life, you know, what is it that you're talking about?
To me, being empowered means that I have the power over my life. And starting with that, it means I have the power over myself. Because so often people are triggered by other people or by events, and you only have to see what's been happening in America over the last 4 years and even now, you know, without making any political statements at all. You know, people get triggered, and when they get triggered, it can be a really harmful situation, both for them and for the other people. And forgive me if I use any coachy language, feel free to, sort of pull me up for that. But, as coaches, we talk about being resourceful or unresourceful. And it's not quite the same as being positive or negative, but being resourceful is when you're looking at things from a responsible filter, that you're not a victim of what's happening to you, but you're actually taking responsibility for what happens to you. And then you interpret things as being either, something that works for you or works against you. And I have lots of favorite quotes and sayings, and one of my favorites is that life happens for you, it doesn't happen to you. And if you make it that life happens for you, it means that everything is an opportunity. If it happens to you, that means that, you're a victim and everything is sort of, you've got no power over that. So that's a very long way. And, I talk a lot. That's a very long way of me trying to explain what I feel empowered means.
It's interesting how two people can see the exact same situation and they can read it and respond to it so differently, can't they? I mean, just thinking back to March when we're all panicking, the stock market collapsed. Like, some people really panicked. They sold off a lot of their investment. They, withdrew their superannuation. They became, very concerned about stuff. Other people used it as an opportunity to start investing. We've seen a huge, phenomenal rise in first-time investors in shares, particularly, especially amongst younger people. And some people have seen really good and strong returns. So it's interesting, exactly the same incident, but you get two very different responses to that.
Absolutely. And I mean, one of the words I got a bit tired of hearing was pivot, right? Because everybody was pivoting in COVID. It's a bit like empowered, I guess. But that is actually where the opportunity was, where you're making life happen for you. So you're looking to see, okay, what are the opportunities that I can use, not to exploit, meaning to somebody's detriment, but to exploit, meaning to make the most use out of it. And I think people in Zoom, as we are now, has become one of the most useful mechanisms or platforms by which people have been able to pivot their business, pivot their life. So all those people who haven't been able to see grandma and grandpa because of isolation, they've been using Zoom to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So many people have been using Zoom for their businesses, and businesses have grown, like coaching businesses have, just exploded. So definitely it can be both a threat or an opportunity.
I made the mistake of speaking to a friend a couple of months ago who was going through a particularly low point of self-doubt. She has a particular business model that is very people-centric, and so obviously she has really suffered. And I made the mistake of mentioning that P for pivot word, and let's just say that she was very triggered by that. And I have learned from that yes, we do have to pivot. And, I'm actually coming to you today from the Canberra Innovation Network. And we talk a lot here about agility and pivoting. And these are things that are so important. But it's one of those things that people have to be really, really ready to hear that word, don't they? You can't make someone pivot. They have to be ready in themselves to see that opportunity.
And that, again, comes back to my sort of premise of living an empowered life, that you have to firstly, whatever you're feeling, you have to own it. You have to first be aware of it, acknowledge it. I'm feeling really scared. Okay, that's fine. Sit with it, work out why you're feeling scared. And quite often, particularly with COVID, it's quite a reasonable emotion to have. What's going to happen to my business? I can't get customers through the door. How am I going to cope? How will I feed my children? What will happen about my mortgage? And as I'm saying this, I'm feeling the tension in my body rise, and it's not even happening to me. And that's what happens. You can feel it in your body. Allow yourself to feel it and sit with it for a while. Because by doing that, you are acknowledging yourself, because feelings are a great thing. Wouldn't it be horrible if we didn't have any feelings? So sit with it, but don't wallow in it. I'm actually the kind of person who likes to do a little bit of wallowing, depending on what it is, but I don't like to live and wallow. So my premise is feel the feeling, give yourself full permission to feel it at whatever, level it needs to get at, but then bring it down a bit and ask yourself, is this serving me to be feeling this anxious? If my blood pressure is rising and if I'm feeling really stressed, maybe I'll have some kind of medical incident, which I don't want, and that will just compound things. So what can I do to bring it back? And now when you do that, you're far more likely to be able to look at what options there are. Because if your emotions are, in full flight, then obviously the brain is taken, the brain space is taken up with all the feeling bits rather than all the thinking bits, because generally they don't work well, they don't work that well together. So give yourself the luxury, if you like, to feel what you're feeling, own it, and then determine, okay, now that I've felt it, I've acknowledged it, now what can I do about it? Do I want to live in fear, or do I want to do something about the fear? And the other thing is, share your problem with somebody. If you're lucky enough to have, family or friends or a partner or somebody who can be supportive to you, that's awesome. And if you don't, then find somebody, who will be supportive, whether it's a friend, whether it's your doctor, particularly now with a lot of mental health sort of services out there. And I know in COVID they were overstretched. I get that, and without wanting to sound self-serving, yes, you can even find a coach. There are some platforms on Facebook where they actually offer free coaching. And there are some coaches that offer pro bono sessions. In fact, that's something I did around the area. I went to some of the businesses and offered, pro bono coaching for their staff. Mind you, that was quite late in the piece. I was a bit late I didn't pivot early enough, right? So there are lots of opportunities, and even churches for people, who are of the faith. And I think even people who perhaps don't go to a church, if they did go to a church and ask for help, I can't imagine a church would turn them away.
That's just so many wise insights there, Alyson. And we've got Tiang Pao on the line, who said, "Hi, Alyson. Yeah, yay, you, here to support you, and that she loves your wisdom." And I so agree with this. You do need to be able to, sit with how you feel. Being with like-minded people is so important, because if you're around other people who are also panicking and also fearful, like, it's important to be there for their support,
Yeah.
but there's a time where you have to sort of say, well, actually, no, I can't deal with this right now. I remember back in March, my dad, who was quite worried about stuff, and he's, in his 70s, so, he is in that age bracket where he needs to be understandably worried about these things.
Sure.
But wanted to tell me all about how COVID was such a terrible way to die and go into details. And I had to say, Dad, I really love you. This isn't helping me right now. I'm going to stop this conversation, because it was just freaking me out.
Exactly. I had a similar conversation with my father, who's long past, but I think he just retired. I think he just retired. So he's feeling very mortal, because he was 65 now, and I think he was thinking he was going to die. And he was telling me how he was frightened to close his eyes and go to sleep, right, in case he didn't wake up.
Mm.
And I've always been a Pollyanna. The glass is always half full. That's just how I am, because my premise is you either laugh or you cry, so you may as well laugh. Anyway, so when he was telling me this, and I know he wasn't that religious through his life, but as he got older and he was feeling more mortal, so he went back to church and going to communion as a Catholic. And I remember just saying to him, well, Dad, the way I feel is you're going to go with your eyes are open or your eyes are closed, you're going to die at your time. But what you can do to make you feel better is maybe when you go to sleep, just pray. And when you wake up and you're afraid, just pray. And amazingly, that seemed to have had it gave him some solace. So basically, whatever gives you comfort. And for those of us who are lucky enough to have some faith of things outside of ourselves, then that's awesome. Because when you feel that and I'm not advocating religion or not, I'm just sort of saying people who believe in a higher power, the universe or what have you, they do tend to have something outside of themselves to not just worry about, oh my gosh, this is out of my control. This is out of my control, but I can pass it to a higher power, whether you call it the universe or angels or God, and whatever name you might give your God, so be it.
Yeah, that's a lot of wisdom right there. Like I said, you're kind of an old soul. You have that sense of calmness. And yeah, taking it outside of yourself, we've seen many, many difficult times throughout history, and people have had the resilience to get through that. Well, most people anyway, so it's important to put it into a higher way. Now, you have done some work too in terms of framing how what we think is so important to our outcomes and how we act.
So can you just repeat that, please?
How important our thinking is in terms of our success mindset.
Yeah, so basically, our thoughts are based on the meaning we give it. We can either give it a meaning that is resourceful, that works for us, or a meaning that is unresourceful. If we were talking about COVID, for example, and that particularly in a business sense, that is, again, you can look at, okay, so this means that I'm not going to have any any customers coming through the door, but maybe I can actually have a takeaway business. So I can't remember. There was a particular food business or something to do with food and drink, whereby that's what they did, and now that's all they do. They only do online orders. They don't do any in the restaurant or whatever it is. It may be wine actually. Oh, I can't remember. Had I really thought about it, I should have done some research. But basically, what I'm saying is, you can either have a new business model that still works for you, or you can just go, you know what, I'm just going to go under, and then you go under.
Yeah, so we had a lovely meal a couple of weeks ago at degustation at a place called Table by Canberra Gourmet, and they had pivoted during COVID. So both the husband and wife, the chefs, he was head chef at Sage Restaurant, which has just been awarded Best Restaurant in Australia. During COVID, he couldn't work. His wife had been making some food to sell at home for a while, so they pivoted. There's that P word, but they pivoted, and they started offering good quality restaurant foods frozen from home. So that did really well for a while, and they got a good write-up, and then the demand for that went down a little bit. And now they've opened their own restaurant, and it's really quite a unique one because it only seats 8 people. You have to buy the ticket in advance. You buy it through Eventbrite, so it's not like you make a reservation, you may or may not show. You buy it in advance, you show up for the event, and so only 8 people and only 4 times a week. And they've just had a fabulous write-up in the Canberra Times, and they're sold out for 2020.
Wonderful. That's so good. And I've just remembered as you were talking, it was actually a chocolate, it was a chocolate business, a business that was actually selling, high-end chocolates. And they realized that obviously people weren't coming into the store to buy the chocolate. So they then started an online business, and that's all they do now.
Wow. Fascinating. Yeah. So in terms of our negative self-talk and negative thinking, so how can people reverse negative self-talk?
Well, basically, a lot of our negative self-talk comes from our negative self-belief, which is basically, it comes from when we were children. And even those of us who feel that we've had the most happy whatever childhoods, you'll be surprised that there have been particular incidents that we've glossed over, or and we talk about either we distort, delete, or generalize according to the various filters, because that's what keeps us safe. And our brain is geared to keep us safe. And it keeps us safe both from physical danger, but also from emotional hurt. And most often you'll find that negative self-worth comes from when we were children. And that's a lot of what we do with NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, for anybody who hasn't come across NLP. And we then work on those incidents from childhood, and then we reverse them. But for somebody who's not going to go into NLP, or is just wondering, I've got this negative self-talk, I would actually I would ask them, why are you thinking that way? And is that what you really believe? And what I've done actually, I had a woman who had she was quite a confident businesswoman, but she had a crisis of confidence, because she'd started a new job and she wasn't really quite sure, how her boss viewed her and stuff. And it was during COVID, so they hadn't had much opportunity for engagement and interaction. And I said to her, well, just go and find me, some references of yours from the past, and just write a reference for a person with your name. It's not you, you're not writing about yourself, you're writing about a third party, just telling me all the things about this person. And then I was going to do a coaching. Actually, she asked me for coaching, and I said, look, I don't think we were friends. I said, I don't think you need coaching. We'll just spend a couple of sessions. And that's what we did. And the second session, she said, oh, wow, I feel so much better. And then we talked about some strategies for her to go and talk to her boss. And it was all done and dusted. So using that kind of situation, what I would say is write down everything that you're good at, or everything other people say you're good at. So I find it quite funny that people keep telling me I'm wise, and I've never really thought of myself as wise. But now I'm owning it because everybody says it. So it can be, if you're in that really negative kind of spiral, it's hard to get out of it. But people will be saying good things about you. Write them down. And, write down what you like about yourself. because mostly there is something we will like about ourselves, whether it's our hair or our eyebrows or our lips or the color of our eyes or something. And I'd say start making a list of positives, and then start off with saying just one positive thing about yourself, and maybe add to that every day. But basically, it all comes down to three things. We don't feel we're good enough, we don't feel we're worthy, and we don't feel we're lovable. Marissa,
They are big. They are really big things, Alyson, and so many people do struggle with finding anything positive about themselves as it is. And this whole thing of what other people say about you is fascinating too, because I remember I started a new job where everyone kept saying, "Oh, you're our counter-terrorism expert," and I wasn't a counter-terrorism expert. But after about 3 people said it, I went, "Yeah, fine. You think I'm a counter-terrorism expert? I now am." I just wanted to interrupt you to share some of the comments that have come through. As Tiang saying, so true, the power of prayers. I totally rely on it. Deborah Parsons has said hello to us both. And Tiang has said, crisis in confidence happens to all of us. It's how we choose to deal with it. And Deborah, same word again here, you're going to love this, has said, Alyson, you are very wise. So you've got to own that now. And Tiang has said, or we feel like we're too different and don't fit in.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Tiang and Deb. I appreciate that. The other thing I was going to say is Marissa Peer, who is a British hypnotherapist. She does what's called rapid transformation therapy. And she says she actually uses a few examples of very high-powered clients that she's had, like a Hollywood producer or something who had lots of money, but who just had no self-worth. And she said, just put on your mirror, I am enough. And she recommends that people do that. So she recommends red lipstick, put on your mirror, I am enough. And that might be for somebody who might find it a bit difficult to find anything good about themselves. And I know that there are some people who can get to that low ebb, particularly given if they haven't had a very sort of supportive, family or abusive relationships or whatever. So put on I am enough, and that will be a good start to getting out of that. The other thing I would say is, in terms of other people's opinions of you, one of my other favorite sayings is, if you don't value somebody's opinion enough to ask for their advice, don't take their criticism.
Well, that's the point, because some people, that you're just not on the same wavelength. So if they told me to do something, I wouldn't value their advice. So why would their criticism matter?
Exactly.
So wise.
I've owned wise. I even put it on Facebook. Thank you.
Well, that's fabulous. And you had a few other tips as well of things in terms of how our past doesn't determine our future, and how we can make sure that we break that nexus of the past running our self-talk moving forward. How can we break that?
And that is so true. And that is basically just coming back to your self-worth and feeling that you are good enough. We also talk about something that's called the self-esteem triangle, which is about owning your emotions, which I talked about, and expressing them to people that this is how I feel. And knowing that you're worthy and you're good enough means that you have a right to your emotions. We all do. We have a right to everything, really, everything that's good in life. But a really important thing too is about boundaries, not letting people, having a boundary that you don't let people cross over. And that keeps you safe. It also keeps them safe, is not necessarily the right word, but it keeps your emotional being safe. And it means that you're not going to take it out on them. You can just be sort of resourceful and say, no, I'm sorry, I don't appreciate that, or I don't believe that. Please step away. And that, I know that takes time. And all of this stuff takes time and practice. So I would say start small and practice. And as I said, start just writing one thing positive about yourself every day, and then see if you can add to it. So by the end of the week, you should have 7. And another good thing is ask other people, if you're brave enough, say, look, I'm actually doing an inventory of whatever. One of my favorites is I'm doing a challenge, or I've been asked to do, something by somebody. So I've been asked to ask 10 people for 3 things about me. And that might be a good way to start.
Well, I'm actually going to put a challenge for those of who are listening, either live or replay. And so this is a big one. Can you share something wonderful about yourself? What is it that people say about you that is amazing and wonderful? We know that Alyson is wise, so she's just, has owned that already. But, what is it that, people regularly say about you that you do that is pretty amazing? And you know it because you hear it. You just choose not to listen to it sometimes or own it. But what is it that is really special and unique? See,
well, I love that. Good on you for throwing that out there. Come on, people, jump on, do the challenge. Basically, I'd say self-worth is to try and get in touch with your self-worth and finding out, who you are and why you're important in life and what you want is important. The other thing is about choice. You can choose whether you want to believe something or not. You can choose your behavior, whether you're going to, interpret it in a positive way or a negative way, resourceful or unresourceful. And the third thing would be gratitude. When you're grateful, and I mean, even though you might not think a lot of good things about yourself, you can be grateful that you're here on earth. You can be grateful that you have a job. Whatever you've got, be grateful for, because gratitude is just, for me, that brought me healing from my painful experience. When my life fell apart. So that's
gratitude is so transformative. It really is. Whenever I'm having a bad day, and actually last week I was dealing with a lot of scarcity mindset. I know, like Miss Abundance mindset, I was dealing with scarcity. We all have limiting beliefs or blockages. They come up at certain times, and last week was a big one for me. And how I got through it was really, making a conscious effort to go through gratitude with what you have, because it's so easy to think about what you don't have, rather than focusing on the amazing things that you do have.
I know. And even if you don't look at what you have, you can be grateful for a beautiful sunny day. Or if it's raining, you can be grateful that we're going to have rain in our dam, so that we don't have to have water restrictions.
Yeah, after all of that drought, we were praying for rain. Now we've got rain.
Yeah, you can find gratitude in a lovely cup of coffee, or, whatever. It's there for you. My girlfriend, who actually brought me into this awareness of New Age thinking and self-development and personal development, she used to just say things like, she'd see a butterfly go past and she'd say, "Thank you, God. Thank you for that beautiful butterfly." And at first I used to think that's a bit flaky, but you know what? After a while, I began to kind of be thinking that way too. So if I couldn't find, like, my favorite pair of shoes or the other, if I had one sock and I couldn't find the other one, I'd say, "Please, God, help me find my sock." And then I'd say, "Oh, thank you, God, I found the sock." So you can find gratitude if you look hard. In fact, if you apply yourself, you can find gratitude in the smallest of things.
Yeah, there are. Gratitude is amazing. So I've got some more comments that I'm going to read through, and then we're going to wrap up. And thank you so much for everyone for your comments. Tiang says, yes, love Marissa Peer. Tiang said, I did her course last year and she's awesome. Jackie Owen said she's loving this. Tiang said, great tips. And her word is generous.
Beautiful.
Generous.
She is. She's a very generous lady. Yeah.
Jackie Owen said, I love learning. Yeah, you do. Both is true of both of you. Tiang said, me too, Jackie, I love learning. Jackie said her internet connection is cutting in and out, but she'll come back more once she's got that sorted. Deborah Parsons said, being grateful can help turn a situation from the negative to the positive. Yeah, it can, can't it? It can. And you don't always see that at the time, but like it can really, because you're changing your vibration, so you're beginning to bring the possibilities in. Tiang said, having a grateful heart is transformative. So true. So thank you everyone for sharing your magic things about what other people say of you. And Tiang, your generous really resonated for me because you're surprisingly generous. It's like, well, what is that supposed to mean? But I think because I'm frugal, people expect me to be a Scrooge and a cheapskate, and they're always surprised to find that I'm not.
And can I just say, generosity is a thing of heart. It's about your spirit. It's not about whether you give or don't give things or money. It's about the way you treat people. It's the way you speak to people. It's your spirit. It's the way you're respectful, and that to me is pure generosity. You're actually giving your time to somebody. How generous is that? Because you can get more money, but you can never get more time. And speaking of generosity, so Serena, that time we met, you actually gave me a book because you were giving away, it was your 365 days of giving. And thank you. That was really special. I did appreciate that.
Well, thank you. Well, so I forgot this is a leap year, so it's actually a 366 challenge. My 8-year-old son pointed that out to me, I think on day 1 or day 2. It's like, oh, I should have known this. But I've gone past 366. I'm currently at 450, so I'm aiming for 1,000.
Wow.
But seriously, the honour was mine. I heard you speak so passionately about how you really wanted to work with women, you know, in their 40s and older. And this was a beautiful book by Kelly Doust, who's also my publisher, actually. She up the Joyful Publish. She works with Murdoch Books, and she's a writer herself. Beautiful, beautiful lady who also writes on vintage clothing, and, you know, she's just graceful and stunning and gorgeous. And she's written this whole book about, you know, the power age, women, you know, in their 40s and beyond. And I knew you would like it, or at least I hoped you would like it. So
I did, and I do. Thank you.
Well,
more importantly, the gift, you know, that just, I mean, you didn't really know me from a bar of soap, other than, I'm not even sure if we sat together that time. I think we may have, but it was just such a beautiful, generous thing to do, and I just loved that. And I love the business of the fact that you had taken it upon yourself to give at least one a day, and now you know, exceeded that. Good on you. Thank you.
Well, the idea originally was 1 a day, and then I sort of had a bit of a stop over winter. During COVID, I stopped for a while and during bushfires, for different reasons, mainly because it was difficult to get out.
Sure.
But it's just been actually fascinating because I haven't done it with an expectation of getting anything in return.
No.
I did it to minimalise and to make people think about not just dumping their stuff when it doesn't bring them joy. So I had a specific reasons for doing this. But what has been amazing is how transformative it has been. I get so much back in return. I don't ask for these things back necessarily. Sometimes I do. Like sometimes I put it out to my Buy Nothing group that I want a particular thing. But, you know, because I give, then I get back, you know, and it's in weird ways. Like this week I went and had dinner twice. Two sets of friends invited me around for dinner, you know, and both were giving me different things. So, you know, I just receive that now with honour and pleasure.
I love that. And in fact, we really need to be comfortable with receiving as well, because a lot of people are comfortable to give but not to receive. And that can also be something to do with self-worth. So good on you for being as generous in receiving as you are in giving.
Well, thank you. And the honour really was mine for receiving your wisdom today. So thank you to everyone who has listened and commented and participated. This will obviously be available via replay in the Joyful Business Club. Now, Alyson, you're going to share details of how everyone can find you for your coaching and other services. And wish you much love with everything that you're doing in this world.
Thanks again, Serena, and same to you. And thank you for the opportunity. And thank you, everybody who's watched and listened and commented. I will put my details in the comments. So thanks again, and all the very best, and good luck with the rest of your giving campaign of 540 or whatever you've got to go.
I've given away more over winter. I just haven't written about it, so it's going to be close.
Love it. Love it.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you. Cheers.